Hey, what's up, guys? This is Joseph Rojas from the band Seventh Day Slumber, and you're listening to Solid Rock Radio. Keep it locked.
Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hey, everybody. My guest tonight is Joseph Rojas of Seventh Day Slumber and the founder and owner of Rockfest Records. We had a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into our call. So I have Joseph Rojas of Seventh Day Slumber with me, fresh off the Grizzly Awards with your 2021 Rock Song of the Year win with What I've Become. How does that feel?
We're excited about it. I mean, that's a big honor. Being in a category with a ton of heavy hitters and, you know, people that I highly respect was cool enough, but to actually bring an award home is really, really amazing. But it was a huge honor. I was glad I could be a part of it and be there, hang out and get to see you and get to see Mary and Joel and everybody else. It was awesome.
Yeah. Old home week, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I didn't have to drive that far for it. You know, it's right down the road from my house.
That was awesome. While we're talking about the Grizzly Awards, what are your feelings about the importance of the Grizzly Awards?
Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different things that come up when you talk about award shows. You have people that really hate them. Then you have people that really love them. And then you have people that have a love-hate. And those are usually people that get nominated and don't win or don't get nominated that year. And I've certainly had my share of love-hate with award shows. And I'm like, man, we worked really hard on that record. It didn't even get nominated. Oh, I hate this thing. And then next year it's like you get nominated. Oh, man, I love the Dove Awards. I love the Grizzly Awards. Love the, We Love Awards or whatever award show it is. And so, but honestly, for me, it's real simple. The importance of it to me isn't about like, oh, look, I beat everybody else in my, genre or whatever. It's just a way to feel like somebody actually noticed what I did. It's not the reason we do what we do, any of these artists. The reason that these artists that have been nominated for the Grizzly Awards, the reason they do it is because they actually care about people that are struggling, people that are hurting in life, people that need hope. And so they write music and they tour tirelessly and they go and max out their credit cards. Not that I'm advising anyone to do that, by the way, but they do what they can to be out there so some kid doesn't take their life or some adult who's struggling with an issue doesn't stay lost. So that's the reason that these artists do that. Sometimes you don't necessarily hear about all the people that you've helped. Sometimes you feel like maybe you're not sure if you're making a difference when really, if you could see how deep the roots go, you would realize, wow, this is what my song, or whether it's spoken word or whether it's, Rock on Purpose or whether, your show, whether it's whatever, you don't always hear how it's impacting people and the deep level that it's impacting people. So when someone does an award show like the Grizzly Awards, it really is just a way to say, hey, man, we see you. We see you.
You've hit the nail on the head. We really do want to celebrate you guys. And the response from artists and fans has been phenomenal. We're going to just keep going.
Absolutely. Well, we love it and we support it. Seventh Day Slumber has a special place in our heart, for all of you. And we've known you at different times in your careers, different places that you've been involved in and all of that. So to see it come full circle, something like this that actually helps to support these artists and give them a pat on the back.
What kind of hope do you have for this faith-based music industry?
I have hope for humanity. Some people say I shouldn't even have that in this day and age. But if you stay on Facebook or Instagram or whatever long enough, TikTok, you start losing that hope in humanity. But at the end of the day, my hope is in Jesus. And that may sound like a cliche thing to say, but it's the truth. I have hope in him. And because I have hope in him, I have hope that the people that say they serve him are going to get it together, and that includes this industry.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the industry strayed away in a big, big way. The CCM pop world is kind of the CCM pop world. It's still doing what it's doing, but the rock genre is what's changed so much. You see artists that have lost their faith, lost their way. You see it more and more, and there's a lot to it. So I'll make it real quick. What I see is that you have a lot of rock artists who aren't accepted in places. So the church at one point, was bringing in all kinds of rock tours. And we went from the Striper days where they couldn't stand looking at you and you were all going to burn in hell for having long hair and singing loud and, whatever. From those days to actually the Under Oath and the Tooth and Nail kind of subculture, to where then all of a sudden it became mainstream and all the churches wanted to bring in the rock tours. And so now it seemed like several years ago, we went back to rock got excommunicated. And so what happens with that is that you have a lot of artists that get hurt and they're like, man, I'm out here trying to reach lost people and you won't even help us to do that. Your church won't allow them in there. You won't allow us in there. You look at us some type of way and they get hurt. And when they get hurt and don't feel accepted by the church, and then Christian radio won't play their song or whatever, you have a lot of people that have kind of faded away. As an artist, Seventh Day Slumber, Joseph Rojas, I never looked to the industry to give me my identity. I never looked to them for their approval. I never looked to them for their promotion. I never, I guess when I first started, I did. And I found out that it hurt too bad to do that, because I'll never measure up to what you need me to be or want me to be, because I wasn't created for that. I wasn't created to be what you need me to be or what you want me to be. I was created for a purpose that God has for me. And so I stopped. I was always allowed to come hang out, and people would use my name. Oh, Joe, yeah, this, Joe, that. But they never let me sit at the table, and I felt that. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't need to sit at your table, and God has prepared a place for me. And so I focused on that. But I see this industry right now in a pivotal place. I feel like there's a lot of hurting kids out there, and they need this. They need this genre. They need the message that these bands have. And these bands have to stay strong and not just go mainstream. Like, it's okay to go mainstream and play all the clubs, play like our Rockfest artists do, but don't get so hurt that you leave this all together and leave that message behind, or bring this bitter, hurt, hate message, because these kids already get that. What makes us different is that we can give them hope, and that hope is in Jesus. So there's a whole lot there to unpack, but that was just right off the top of my brain.
That was a lot on the top of your brain. Let's talk Seventh Day Slumber and the new Death by Admiration album.
Yeah, so that album, it's the heaviest record we've ever put out. And thanks to Blaze, my son, and Weston, our guitar player, they wrote the majority of the album. Blaze actually wrote about 70% of the melodies, and then I wrote about 30%. So he obviously wrote the majority, and then him and I wrote 50-50 on the lyrics. Weston wrote all the guitars to it, other than one song which I wrote with Josiah from Disciple, slowest song on there, called Can't Say Sorry Enough. And that's a song to my wife that I've been wanting to write for a long time, because I struggled with an alcohol addiction. That's also how I know that this industry can chew you up and spit you out. I was hurting badly as the lead singer of this band, helping as many people as you could possibly help in a band, but I couldn't help myself. I was hurting, and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. And so, but this record has some real personal stuff on it. And people go, man, this is the best record you guys have ever put out. And it's the least that I had to do with a record.
Oops.
And I'm like, well, so what is this saying? But I think it's clear that Blaze and Weston are better than me.
Well, the family tradition of songwriting being passed on to Blaze.
Well, you know what? Then I'm going to take some credit for it.
All right. That's right. You had something to do with it.
The album streamed 1 million streams last month. And for some artists, that's not a big deal. But, for us, that's double what we were streaming per month. And it's only getting better. And so that doesn't mean a bunch of money comes in when you're streaming, obviously, but it does show that people are listening to it. And that's what I mean by that. So people are listening to it. They have it on repeat, and there's songs that are resonating with them.
Backstage with Mothership returns after this. Out Performance Shop is a proud supporter of Solid Rock Radio. They specialize in retail and wholesale of automotive, high-performance, racing, and off-road products. They also carry a variety of accessories from remote control cars to rock and roller multi-carts. On the web at outperformance.com.
On this new album, Death by Admiration, you were trusting Blaze and Weston with the creative process. Was that on purpose, or did that just happen?
So Weston was bringing me songs. He said, hey, man, I really want to help write on this new record. And I was all for it. And he was sending me stuff, but it was like this prog metal. And that's what he listens to, like that style of music, and bands like Periphery and,
Yeah. I feel that, gent.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, dude, this isn't us. I told him straight up. I said, this isn't us. And he said, well, tell me kind of what vibe you're looking for. I told him, look, I want to go heavier than we've gone. Like, I don't want to run all of our fans off. Yeah, it's not the same band. So he actually came back with a song. It was What I've Become. And I was like, oh, I can write to that one. That's awesome. So I started writing to it, and I thought I had something really cool. And then all of a sudden, Blaze said, hey, Daddy, do you mind if I do some writing to it too? And I said, sure. So he muted the scratch tracks that I had done. I didn't even ever want to unmute mine after I muted it.
Never mind.
Yeah, because I was like, wow. I mean, seriously, like every parent sees their kid as more than maybe they are. But this was honestly, it was amazing. And I said, dude, we got to release this song now. And so Kellen produced it. Like, I sent him my vocals. Blaze actually produced my vocals. So Blaze told me what to sing, kind of where to sing to hit the melodies and the things that he wrote, because it was so different than what I normally sang. Blaze actually recorded my vocals, and then we sent them to Kellen. And then Kellen did some stuff to them and made them, beefed them up, and put some effects and whatever else. And then What I've Become went #1. And so that's when I told Weston and Blaze, I'm fine with you guys taking the reins on this whole record. And we were just going to do an EP, but it started going so quickly that we decided to do a whole 10-song album. And now we're working on our next album. It'll be called Feasting on Vultures. Weston's a writing machine and Blaze is a writing machine, and they write faster and better than I ever could.
Can we talk about how talented Weston is?
Golly, that kid is a beast.
You're unleashing the beast. I think he's just starting to figure out his potential. He's still in his early 20s, right?
Yeah, he's 22. And, Kellen McGregor of Memphis Mayfire, for those that are listening and don't know when they hear Kellen's name, Kellen is an amazing guitar player. And Kellen writes me messages telling me that Weston is one of the cleanest guitar players. But Weston, man, has the best attitude about it. He's a humble dude.
Yeah, he's got a good scream, too.
Man, he does. That kid can scream. He did that screaming, when you listen to Halos, you can feel the pain in that scream. Like, he really meant that. Yeah, we love that dude.
I noticed that the songs on the album deal with a lot of struggles. It's heavier in two ways.
Blaze and I wrote the lyrics, and I think that there's a lot of healing in writing lyrics. And, I never meant for my kids to see me as a drunk, if we're just going to be honest. My kids have always seen me as a hero. They've always seen their daddy as somebody they could count on. They've always seen me as someone that they wanted to be like. And when alcohol started just taking over, and this was years ago, but and God delivered me from that. But unfortunately, Blaze was old enough at least to remember it. And I know it hurt him to see me like that. And so he doesn't show a lot of emotion, but he's a very sensitive dude and caring individual.
I can feel that from him.
Yeah. And so to see me like that, I know it hurt him. I had all these excuses like, well, I don't drink on stage and I don't, I was just hurting and I was trying to drown it out some way, and I wasn't running to Jesus like I should have been. But anyway, I told my wife, I said, I think that there's no way that my kids can respect me anymore. Well, Blaze, we're all in a bus, and he could hear me talking to his mommy. And Blaze told me the next day, he said, Daddy, he's a little kid, he said, Daddy, I want you to know that I still look up to you and I still respect you. I just want you to stop drinking. Wow. And man, I get choked up talking about it.
Powerful.
It was just like, man, I said, son, I want to stop. I just don't know how. And that's the point, like where I was like, man, I had to come to a place where I just had to admit this was bigger than me. Mm-hmm. I kept having all these excuses, but finally I got off tour and I told my wife, if I don't get clean off of this alcohol, and I never ran back to drugs. So that was another excuse I had. Well, I'm not a drug addict anymore or whatever. But, you always come up with excuses. I had hurt people and I had hurt my wife and I hurt, my kids, and I knew I needed to change that. And so I locked myself basically in a room and said, if I can't get clean in the first week of being home off this tour, I'm going to go check myself into a rehab. And I don't care what people say about me. You're going to have your husband back. My kids are going to have their daddy back. And it was about 4 days of crawling around on that floor and everything. But God healed me and I never touched it again. And like I said, that was several years ago. But when we're talking about lyrics, that's what the song Can't Say Sorry Enough is about. And it's to my wife. But Blaze wrote part of that song with me, like me, him, and Josiah wrote that song. I don't know, just having him there to write with me, I felt like it was healing for him, healing for me. And then there were songs also about losing a loved one, like Halos, just not being able to say bye. We've had a lot of our fans commit suicide through the pandemic. We were getting calls all the time and messages from parents saying, my son or daughter was a big fan of your band and they just lost their battle, with depression. And so Halos is about, I had a friend commit suicide that I didn't get a chance to call, and she needed some help and I didn't reach out. So kind of living with some of those regrets, but there's just a lot of real raw stuff on there.
Well, I think life is real raw. Christian music industry kind of sugarcoats that. And there are a lot of people that are hurting deep down.
Yeah. Well, that's why people need this genre. Music is a powerful tool. If we really believe in this God we say we believe in, mighty, powerful God who heals the brokenhearted, who saves and restores lives, who changes people's lives and heals marriages and brings kids back to their parents and parents back to their kids, and you really believe he is this God, then you should say it proudly, loudly, and you shouldn't be ashamed of what people say. Because then at that point, if you are ashamed of what people say and I'm not talking about being cheesy with it, like you got to say it in every, because if you got to say it in every lyric, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, but it should come out in your lyrics. If he's all in there, it should come out. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm seriously just saying that people need this. We need to be shaping culture. Music shapes culture. What is your music saying to these people? We're talking about painful issues. We're not talking about happy, happy, joy, joy all the time. That's not what I'm saying, because anybody that's ever followed Seventh Day Slumber, and we've been doing it for 25 years, if you've followed us, you know that we talk about any and everything. And so it's not about like skipping past the deep, hurtful stuff because you only want to talk about how Jesus is, joy. No, we go through pain. We go through hurt. Men and women of the Bible went through pain and hurt. At the end of the day, you got to at least leave them hope. People need that right now. They need hope badly.
Amen. I want to talk about the City Rockfest tours.
Yeah.
Now, those seem to break the mold of touring for the rock and metal scene. What was different about City Rockfest tours?
Well, City Rockfest tours came at a place and time when rock was like excommunicated. It was gone. That was nothing. And to put a rock tour together was like the most difficult thing on the planet to do. Seventh Day Slumber stayed touring because people would bring me in to speak. So we were able to stay busy while a lot of bands like just came off the road. It was rough for everybody. And like I said, the only reason 7 Day Slumber was playing is because I was speaking, and then our band would play. But I was like, man, these bands are life-changing bands, and they need an outlet. And more than these bands, there are kids and adults that still love this kind of music, and no one is doing anything for them. So I reached out to Kevin first, and I said, hey, Kevin, I have this idea. I want to do a tour with you and a bunch of other, like, no openers. Everybody is a heavy hitter. And I said, I would like to do 7 Day Slumber, Disciple, and Decyfer Down. And then if we can bring 9 Lashes and they're down, cool. And I forgot who else. We were Spoken and whatever else. And Kevin said, I want to do it. Do you think people are down to do it? And I said, well, let's just put it this way. If we pull the right team together, the right group of bands, people will do it. But I don't think they're going to give us what we're used to making, any of us. And he said, well, I'm down to take a cut. If you guys are down, everybody take a pay cut just to go make this happen for the fans. And dude, he said, well, also, if Decyfer Down is in and you can get all of us in there, then that's a tour. Well, Decyfer Down had been retired for 3 years. They were off the road. They hadn't played in 3 years. They sold their bus. I know that because we bought it, and I called them and they said, well, hold on. So Disciple is on board. And I said, dude, Disciple said they'd headline it if I could get you guys and us and maybe another bigger act. And he said, well, let me call you back. And I said, okay. And then I was thinking, oh, Decipher's not going to do it. And then they called back and they were like, dude, we're in. And when we put that tour together, and then we had like Children 18-3, it was all heavy hitters. And the first show was like packed out. Second show packed out. We booked 40 dates on that first tour, and they were like back to back to back to back. We were all dead tired. And then it became a thing. And it started bringing rock back, and it started bringing bands back. Decyfer Down came out of retirement. Disciple started touring on their own. It wasn't not like we did that for Disciple. Disciple sold, enough records on their own to go tour. They're an extremely popular band. Everybody knows that. And I love it. But I'm saying it brought kind of like the rock excitement back to where we could all go back and tour as bands again. But we continued to come back and do that every year for like 7 years, I think. It was doing it every year. And then the pandemic, like when everything got shut down,
pretty much took the air out of the sails, right?
It did. And we haven't done it since.
You're listening to Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio. Check us out on Facebook at I'm with Mothership.
Well, you got something coming up.
Ooh,
your latest tour, Death by Admiration Tour.
Yes. Yeah, man. 7 Day Slumber, Decyfer Down, Spoken, and Amongst the Giants. And the coolest part about this tour is that every band on this tour has brand new music that they're playing on the tour.
We're going to get to hear some fresh stuff.
Yeah, a lot of fresh stuff. Like you're going to get stuff from Decyfer Down that their new stuff is redonkulous.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to get to hear a little of that myself. It's amazing.
It's solid. I love it. And I mean, Amongst the Giants, their stuff is crazy. And then you got Spoken writing all this new stuff. And then 7 Day Slumber, like 8 songs off the Death by Admiration album. We're coming swinging. We have this full crazy light show for all the bands. That's what I loved about the City Rockfest tour is when we decided to do the City Rockfest tour, we said every band's going to sound amazing. Every band's going to get great sound. Every band's going to get great lights. Every band's going to get the great mics and great everything, because let the fans have a good time. And that's what we wanted. And that's what we're doing again for the Death by Admiration tour is every band is going to sound amazing. Every band's going to have the LED wall behind them. Every band's going to have all the lights, the new sound, new lights that we just purchased. My wife and I kind of have a production company that we use for these tours, and we're providing all that stuff.
That's amazing. You've got quite a few dates, too, so there are a lot of them that people can hop onto.
Yeah.
Some of us might have to travel a little bit, and hopefully we'll catch you on that.
Your favorite road snacks?
Well, my favorite road snacks now have to do with this meal plan I'm on, and it's like this granola bar by Octavia, which is what I'm eating. But my favorite road snack used to be Reese's Pieces and Reese's peanut butter cups. But
don't bring those to him.
But don't bring those, because now I'm on that Octavia. I'm down 50 pounds. I haven't been able to lose more because, to be honest, I still sneak in a little bit here and there, and that's, that's the issue, but we're working on it.
That's good. You're working on it.
Yeah, I am.
Can we talk a little bit more about Rockfest Records and what's happening with the label?
Yeah, so Rockfest Records, we started about 4 years ago, and my wife and I have a partner, Jenna, who saw what we were doing with the City Rockfest tours, and as a matter of fact, she had even brought us in for one of the concerts. She wanted to invest in us, and so we ended up starting Rockfest Records. And it started taking off quickly, In those early days, it was, we had Zana and The Persuaded.
Random Hero. Yeah. Of course, Amongst the Giants came on, but The Protest was the very first band that we signed. So we started kind of moving quickly, and then the pandemic hit us. And it was like 1 year into the label, we go through the darkest time of the music industry, other than when Spotify hit, I mean? And so here we are, like, oh my goodness. And all of our artists, they stopped touring. They weren't able to tour. We were all trying to figure it out for our artists. We had artists that were upset with us. And we understand, we understand the need for answers, the need for, well, Joe, you own the label. You got to figure something out. But I'm like, other labels couldn't figure it out. Labels with a lot more money than I had and a lot more experience than I had. So that was a difficult time for us. Yeah. And there were times, honestly, where I felt like I'm going to probably lose the amount of money that I put in, and that was fine. But to lose my partner's money, that was what bothered me the most. We weren't selling any records. Our artists, were still like getting big. Their names were, but nobody was making any money. They weren't. We weren't. People will see those streaming numbers and think, wow, that's awesome. But once again, it's 0.3 cents per stream. But let's fast forward. Through that pandemic, we managed to stay afloat. We had a couple of artists want to go independent, completely understand that. We had a couple of artists ask for a release. And so this being on a label is not for everybody, but it is for some. And we've helped out a lot of bands along the way. And as a matter of fact, I think even Zana, we brought her on. We released a record that I think is a legacy record, man. And it's going to be one of those records, Red for War, it's going to live on. And we had the honor of releasing that with Zana. And so I believe that record it hasn't grown to its potential, and I believe it will. Zana is doing great, independent. But we ended up being in the middle of this pandemic, and it hurt a lot of bands. But Rockfest is blowing up, man. We've got a bunch of new artists. Relent, is doing amazing. Rock album of the year.
Yeah, rock album of the year, man. Isn't that crazy? That record is fire.
It is.
That record, they write some solid tunes.
Mm-hmm.
And, Death Stare and another amazing body of work.
The Protest.
The Letter Black, that was a self-titled album. And their song, with Trevor, the Grizzlies, honored them, with fan choice. Mm-hmm. And, that was big for them. So that's another thing leading to to talking about the Grizzlies, about how it really just encouraged. It really lifted them up. I talked to them. They were so ecstatic that they won that, and it just gave them that extra boost energy. But Fireflight, we released a record that is still just killing it. A couple of number ones off of that one, Amongst the Giants. I mean, I just could go on and on. Seventh Day Slumber released a couple of records already, 3 albums on Rockfest, Closer to Chaos, our worship album, Lion and the Lamb, and then Death by Admiration. But yeah, it's going.
Solid. That's awesome. Let's talk real quick about your Teen Hope Line.
Yeah. Well, Teen Hope Line is open to anybody who's hurting, even if you're not a teen and you're struggling and you're going through it and you need someone to talk to. It doesn't matter whether you know the Lord, whether you don't. It's a place online where you can speak with a caring hope coach, is what we call them. If you're a teenager, a caring adult is needed. and maybe you can't talk to your own parents, or maybe you don't feel like talking to your youth pastor about this particular thing or whatever it is, but it's for people that just need someone at that moment. And we want to be there. And right now it's still open from 8 a.m. to 1, and we're looking to do it 24 hours. So if you need help, if you're listening right now and you're going through something, maybe you feel like life is too much and you can't go on, I'm telling you right now that there is a God in heaven who loves you. But I also want you to know that you can talk to somebody right now at www.teenhopeline.com. That's www.teenhopeline.com. And it's going to open up this website, and down to the bottom right, you'll see a little button that you can press down to the bottom right, where you can talk with someone and you can chat in real time, and it asks for your name, and don't have to put your real name if you don't want, but you can put an email there. So that way, if they're on other calls and they can't reach you right back then and there, then in like 10 or 15 minutes, they'll email you and then get on a call with you.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Our time is up, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you for listening tonight. Stay tuned for more great music all night long. Be sure to check out my I'm With Mothership Facebook page and Solid Rock Radio's website. Follow the link under shows to Backstage with Mothership, which will have the links to my guests' social media accounts. This show will be replayed at 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Past interviews available on podcast.solidrockradio.org, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on Pandora platforms. And remember this week, be kind to one another.